Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest, it's a recurring guest, and it's my honor to present Carl Cox. Hi, Carl.
Greetings, Adi. So glad to be here.
It's so good to have you here. So I think you were one of my first guests ever, and I definitely was the first guest on your podcast. So that was 4 years ago, and you actually inspired me to start my podcast. So I was a guest on your podcast, and you convinced me to, I follow what you do, and then you do something, you go, Adi, I found something really good. Okay, Carl, let me see what it is. I'll follow. So then my podcast follow yours. But here we are 4 or 5 years later. I mean, that was like we started during the pandemic, and we stay in touch and we exchange business best practices. We worked on projects together, and it's great. So today, we're going to have first of all, I'm going to introduce you. I'm going to give you a bio, but we're going to talk about specifically what's new with you, what you're doing, how you're helping businesses, conference you're putting up, and different actions that you're doing. So let's start with your bio first. So you're the CEO and founder of 40 Strategy, and 40 Accounting. And you're the author of Lost at CEO. I love that book. I have it on Audible, the hard copy, whatever works for our listeners, definitely get the book. It's a great, great book with a great analogy. Like, you have that, you build it up like the sailing, right? And like you explain the different parts of strategy, which I think it's awesome. And so this is an entrepreneur's guide to strategy. You're the host of Measure Success Podcast, which is the podcast we're talking about, and the 4 Million Strategist Mini Podcast, which I was also a guest on. So listeners can listen to that. And Carl, you do a lot of things, and you're always innovating, always have that huge smile on your face, no matter what happens. So tell us a little bit more. What did I miss here in terms of your entrepreneur journey?
Well, first of all, thank you so kindly for all the kind words. It has been really fun to work with you really almost from the beginning here at 40 Strategy. We connected, and we have once again collaborated, worked with each other. You're truly a professional, and that's why we have continued to work together. You provide tremendous value for our clients, and so that's been wonderful. Yet it has been, there's a lot going on, right? Easy to say politically, globally, and so it's frozen a lot of people's decision making. They get stuck, right? They get stuck because they're like, what do we do? The tariffs are hitting us. How do we impact? How do we make changes? Do we move forward? Do we just wait? And from the beginning, from when we opened up this business, 3 months later, COVID started. To what you have then we have the recession post-COVID, and then we have what's going on here today. The constant thing I'm saying continuously with our clients and with people we work with is don't stop. Keep moving. Whether you do a 30-day, a 90-day, or a 5-year plan, you should be continuously moving and adjusting going forward, because those who die, it's because they've stopped moving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been hard, by the way, people, any business owner who's listening to this today, the reality. Yes, if you're selling NVIDIA servers, you're doing really well, or you're serving that direct market in AI. But the reality is most of the market has been struggling significantly. There's not been free money in the marketplace. Interest rates have been high. and labor market is still tight. It's still challenging. I mean, it's a little bit looser than it was in the past, but it's still not easy. And then you have this new thing, which is no longer new, which is AI, right? Which has been popularized. It's now a thing that you and I can use. A fun little story, Adi. We have to get a new pump for our water that we have in our house, and my wife took the two quotes from two different contractors and threw it in a chat GBT to validate whether this thing is right. I mean, these are things we couldn't do.
I did it too. I got two quotes from plumbers, and I put it in, and it compared it, and then asked more questions. Yes, I do it all the time.
Exactly. But these are things
Not
we
only
couldn't
that,
have
I
done.
took, I took the homeowner association bylaws, and I needed to find something, and it just like there were like about 13. I mean, I took several documents and put it together, and yes, and then I found my answers. So yes, we all do that.
And it's amazing, right? This is how much this has transformed life today, right? And so for me, it's wonderfully exciting if you're trying to keep up with the wave. And it's absolutely frightening for those who are about to get swallowed by a tsunami.
Mm-hmm.
And so that part of what we're doing, and then the other part, of course, we talk about a little bit later. Right, regardless of your political opinions, and I am apolitical, so I don't care about people's political stance. It's irrelevant to me. That's just emotional garbage, honestly. What you have to focus on is what can you do with what's happening. And
right,
by the way,
you're talking about the new tax bill, which I think is very pertinent, because it doesn't matter, again, it doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not, or you agree with whomever or not. It's here, it's going to be here, and it's going to affect you as a business. So I think we need to look at it from the perspective of, here we have an amazing strategist, which is you, an accountant, and you can actually, I mean, I'm very interested to hear of how do you see this is going to impact businesses and entrepreneurs, especially small businesses.
Yeah, it's very legit. It's very real. Let's just go ahead. I'm just going to hit a couple things right now, just because it's so relevant. And by the way, this tax law is in effect right now, and in 2025, and it's going to be in effect for the next few years. A lot of these now things have been permanent. So for those who aren't familiar, the former act that President Trump had put in beforehand was all going to expire at the end of this year. And so a lot of those lowest tax rates have now been permanent. They're not temporary anymore. So that's the first big thing. But there's a lot of things being put in here to incentivize people to start investing again. So for example, 100% bonus depreciation is back. Okay, what does this mean? You buy a piece of equipment, instead of depreciating over 5 years or 10 years or 15 years or whatever it might be, you can do 100% bonus depreciation up to certain amounts. That is huge, right? So that's going to create buying because people get the full deduction. So this will stimulate the economy for sure. If you're a manufacturer, or if you're a manufacturer, this is pretty cool. Historically, you would get a building to manufacture and it would depreciate over 39 and a half years. Now, you in the past could have done what's called a cost segregation study. By the way, folks, if you have rental real estate property, or if you have investment property of any type, and you do not have a cost segregation study, talk to your accountant, talk to us. You should have done that already. Okay. For purposes of this discussion, we're not going to go much further than that, but simply put, 39 and a half years, meaning basically 2% of your property is depreciated. The new rules, if you have invested into a manufacturing, quote unquote, manufacturing building, 7-year depreciation for the next 5 years. This is going to, part of the, once again, regardless if we believe it or not, this is to drive domestic manufacturing in the US. We're creating now the tax benefits of doing that. So you don't even have to do a cost segregation study. This is going to incent people to put in, at the end of the year, hopefully, interest rates will finally start going down, and it's projected to go down the following year, especially when they have the change in the Fed. And so it will be the beginning for some relief of small business. Now, one more thing I'll touch on, because it's really, well, there's a couple more things. No tax on tips up to certain dollar amounts. That's a real thing, depending on your income level. No tax on overtime up to certain limits. That's a big deal. See, you could be really creative now how you pay people It's going to benefit your employees. This is my favorite, though, is what's called the QSBS, Section 1202, the Qualified Small Business Act. Now, most people who are a small business typically set up as an LLC. And then the first thing we do is change them to an S corporation because we find ways to do a 60-40 split so they pay less self-employment taxes. All right. The problem, though, is what people don't know is if you're planning to sell your business, if you're planning to sell your business in the next 3 to 5 years, there's something called a qualified small business stock. If you have a C corporation and you're able to sell the shares of the company in 5 years, you get 0% capital gains tax after selling the business. Zero. It's tax free after 5 years. So let's think about what people are going to do right now. They're going to put manufacturing in the US. They're going to set up a C corporation. They're going to build that up for the next 5 years. They're going to sell it tax-free. They're going to bet this building on the side to put the manufacturing in. It's going to be under a separate LLC because of the depreciation. It's not going to pay any tax. See the value that people are going to get because of these tax laws. This is truly going to drive incentive. I am super fired up about this.
What do you think it will do to the economy?
Oh, massive stimulus. This is basically a stimulus. It's a stimulus package. It's going to create jobs, better paying jobs for people to be involved with it. And it's going to create cash flow again. Anybody who's in the construction industry knows, or residential real estate, it's been frozen, basically. It's barely been moving. There's going to be a reason people are going to move forward because of the tax incentives to do it. And there's also something called the Opportunity Zone Act. I get the terminology slightly off. Basically, a 7 to 10 year window where you don't have to pay taxes as well if you're putting your investments in certain areas, which typically you don't get investments in. So it's unbelievable what these things are going to do. Incentives around it, and it's going to create more jobs. It's going to create more opportunity to investors go, and people are going to start spending again. That has been the challenge, right? The last thing that has to happen is these tariffs have to be they have to be figured out. It's still causing uncertainty with anybody who has manufacturing overseas. But once that gets solved, which I hope it's by the end of the quarter, meaning under Q3 of 2025, if it does, then we'll start having certainty again, and things are going to move forward. So I am personally, small business has been hammered over the last couple of years. I think we're going to see a recovery with these actions that take place.
That's amazing. So, and I really hope that that's the case, that will happen. What advice can you give to the entrepreneurs that are listening to us right now? How can they take advantage of it?
So first of all, if you have a good CPA, you should be meeting with them quarterly, first of all, right?
And if they're not good, definitely reach out to Carl, because that's what Carl is by profession, is a CPA, but he has an accounting, 40 accounting. So just a plug. Okay, carry on.
No, thank you. I appreciate the plug there. But why I'm saying that is you should never have a surprise with your cash flow. And so there's two pieces you should be running from a business perspective. Number one is, one of the biggest parts of your cash flow is your taxes that you pay if you have a profitable business. And so, especially with all these tax things, incentives we talked about, you should be coordinating, working with them. What decisions should we be making to maximize cash flow? So that's the first thing. The second part is how do we help make sure we're growing our business again? What people miss with good bookkeeping and good financial planning and analysis, right, is that if your business is flat, you're losing money because of inflation. Let's just economic for a moment, global picture. Yes, stock market is up again. It's returned at the point of this part. I'm not saying it will be high forever, but the dollar has decreased between 9 and 13%, which means actually the effective global economy, it's down. So it might feel higher, but it really isn't from a global perspective. And so, which means that inflation is going to happen because our dollar's not strong as it used to be. And if you aren't growing 7 to 10% every year, you're actually losing money. in real dollars, right? And so when everyone says, I'm just going to stay flat this year, I'm saying, well, you're taking a pay cut? They're like, I'm not taking a pay cut. You are from your real earning potential. The third thing I'm going to say is, oh man, the population is no longer growing, right? In the United States, immigration stopped or significantly reduced, which means that if people are familiar with the whole book Blue Ocean Strategy, which is the concept of finding a market that there's no competition, I will make an argument that everything's turning into a red ocean. And so because it's so easy to generate, to innovate, to create things new, to make things less costly, the barriers to entry is significantly less than it used to be. So don't pretend that you have a moat unless you truly have a moat, which means that is you have to be wildly competitive and fierce in the marketplace. Be the best you can be the most cost effective that you can be. That's one of the reasons I love what you do, because you're a part of creating efficiencies in your business. Whether it's literally generating true efficiencies and how to run things faster, quicker, better. And then also, hey, should we consider offshoring, right? Should we using different type of talent to help go about that, right? For our back office or even sometimes our front office. If you're not already doing these things, you're falling behind, right? And so this is where, once again, I get excited about is time to act is yesterday, but there's no time to act. If you haven't started acting, there's no time like today to start moving forward.
It is so true. So true. And Carl, that optimism and that bright future really, it's really encouraging, because when you get hit with bad news and this and that, and you don't want to act and you don't want to do, and being frozen in one place is the worst thing. I think we had the same conversation during the pandemic. You don't wait, you just create. You have to create where you're going and create how you do that. And so if you're not in manufacturing and you're a small business, how would you benefit from all of it? I mean, I guess you will benefit because if there is going to be such a stimulus of expenses. So let's say businesses like ours, where we are trusted advisors to the businesses that we work in manufacturing or construction, etc. We can benefit that way. CPAs, accountant, lawyers, it's like all the trusted advisors will definitely benefit. But any other advice to somebody who is not in money, like maybe they don't get affected directly by manufacturing, or they don't have real estate? How do you see that will affect them?
There's once again, there's going to be a movement again in a positive direction of cash flows, and that will have a multiplier effect on everyone. And so there will be some extent that we're all going to benefit. Now, if you're a solar company, maybe not. If you've been cut in government spending, maybe not, right? So not everybody's been a winner. Just to clarify, there have been losers definitely in this process. That's very real. Matter of fact, I just talked to a solar manufacturer, and I said, hey, maybe I should consider getting this, because it's just a note. The solar credits are expiring at the end of the year in 2025 to get credits. And I asked him, so what are you doing? And he's in a very expensive vehicle, and he's like, I'm shutting my business down. So a little note here, if you are going to buy solar stuff, make sure the person you're working with is actually going to stay in business beyond 2025. But, I think what's important for anybody actually, I'll say this is like one thing that everyone can do. And this is a major change that's going on right now so historically, what would people do to advertise historically if they're a business, no matter what they are? Where would they typically advertise? Like
Online.
experientially? Yeah.
Social
And
media.
through like Google, right? Google would be your number one. And then you might do Meta, and then you might do LinkedIn, right? Those have been like kind of the three ways. All right. Where do you search today?
Well, you advertise on on AI, because that's how you do it.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
But the real thing to do is creating content. One of the reasons you and I both have a podcast is because we're creating a tremendous amount of content every single day. Every single time there's a release, every single blog. This is not an accident, folks. D and I are searchable in the engines today. So if you have a business, I don't care if you hate the camera or you don't hate the camera. I'll say this, we became known as just recently got voted the fourth best strategic planning podcast the Measure podcast did, which was very exciting and very surprising. But I know the reason why is because we've been consistent in our message and our consistency, the type of guests that we have. And once again, what that brought has brought a sense of expertise behind what we have. And you don't have to be crazy. You don't have to do anything you're uncomfortable with. But you have to be yourself and you have to provide your own unique. But this is another thing you need to start tomorrow. You need to start creating content because content is the future of search.
True.
I just heard Gary Vaynerchuk, if anyone who's familiar with him, is fantastic and is listening in person. He asked the audiences, how many of you use Google AdWords? And this was a chiropractic convention. So 2/3 of them stood up. And then he said the next question, okay, how many of you use ChatGPT? This was back in February 25, April. It was interesting. Only about a third of the people stood up. And he said, okay, all you people who stood up, look at the people raising their hands who are using it. Guess where this is going? The movement, the craze is going to searching through AI tools, which means that traditional ads are not going to work, which means that you have to use content. So this is something, Adi, that every single person who's listening today needs to create. Don't be afraid to share how you solve problems.
Right.
What people want is somebody to fix the problems because they don't have time to do it.
Especially if they like when people are not producing, they have more time, they maybe don't spend it as smartly as they should, but they can be, oh well, I'll try it myself. But when we're going to get into this flurry of activity and economy that is doing very well, people will be able to spend on people that can help them with that's not their area of expertise, or they don't have the time. And that's also similar to what happened to some industries during COVID. I mean, obviously some did horribly, but some really exploded because, there was this artificial money getting into the economy with people, and then people were able to spend, but then they will hire people to do things for them, but then it stopped. So now if it's going back into that, there will be more for everyone to shine in their expertise, but you have to your point, you have to decide what your expertise is and do something about it. But Carl, also,
yep, go ahead, please.
I mean, you touched upon AI. We talked about it, like I obviously, if you want to stay ahead, you have to figure out how to use AI in your business. You have to use AI we are doing a lot of things with AI. We also, we specialize in process documentation optimization. So we now brought also AI, we can automate some of it with AI. We had several, projects where we create the workflow, so then somebody can actually use AI in order to automate. And we're also bringing it, we partnering so we can also provide that service to the clients. But one thing is that in this AI world, the personal connection is so important. And we spoke before the podcast, what are you doing, Carl? Oh, I'm going to Nashville, then I'm going to North Carolina, then I'm going here, I'm going there, and then back to this and this. And I think that personal connection is so important. And now you're also going to expand into doing workshops in person, which is vital because I believe that we are going to be craving that human connection even more in order to, because otherwise it's going to be too polarized into the AI. So in order to balance those two, we do need that face-to-face human connection, and that is very important.
People make decisions typically based on trust.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do content, it's about education. It's about creating a sense of brand expertise. That's the core reason we do it. But we gain clients from trust. And we found being in person with people does two things. One is you get to know somebody. Two, you can actually talk about their specific issues. And three, you could create a real plan to get it done. And so we are, this is actually, it's funny, Scott Ballard, who I know and he'll be one of the attendees here at this event. him and I have talked back in 2019 before I even opened up 40 Strategy. We had this, the part of the vision was to do this workshop. And here we are 6 years later. And we're going to create this. Well, it's happening. And
It's a
there's going to be
movement.
this. Yeah, it's a movement exactly of how do we get the best high achieving and those who want to become high achieving companies. They maybe feel stuck. They're maybe trying to get to the next level. We're having an in-person session. Only 40 business owners are going to be capped at that, can attend the event. And this is going to be, we're having our first conference November 3rd and 4th in Phoenix. We're going to continue to have these conferences in the future. But we are having amazing people come to this. And not only are they're going to hear a 45-minute so-ish from each of these experts, but more importantly, they're going to get one-on-one FaceTime with them as well to talk about their specific issue. And so we're having people like Trey Taylor, who did lost it. Sorry, I hear the book here. A CEO only does three things. He wrote the foreword to my book. He's one of the smartest men I know. He reads 100 books a year. He's going to be in our conference, and he's a family office. He's an investment. He has insurance. Brilliant guy. Mark Podolsky of Dirt Rich. He's going to be there. Trent Gillespie, who's one of the top AI people today, who helps out small and mid-sized business. He's going to be speaking at the conference. We're going to have Bob Bidritis, who's a wealth manager. We're going to have Jason Sherwood, who's been a brand person for Nike. Adi, of course, who's here you're listening to, she's going to be there. We're planning to have an expert in R&D tax credits and cost segregation studies, because R&D tax credits back. And
right.
one more person, I'm pretty sure we're going to have George Salmon as well, CEO of Growth Drive. Anyways, it's going to be packed with content, but you're going to come out with results. You're going to come out with your 2026 strategic plan and the top three things you need to work on and what you're going to work on first quarter in 2026. And
Carl, just that one alone,
yeah.
you're gonna come to this conference. It's not going to be just listening to those incredible speakers and and Carl and the leadership, but you're gonna walk out of that conference with your 2026 strategy. And in order to actually take advantage of all this amazing growth that is coming, you got to have a strategy. Otherwise, it's kind of like, what do I do? And you have to have a very precise strategy in order to move forward. And that is such an advantage. So if nothing else, you're gonna walk out with a strategy, but by listening to all the knowledge, absorbing that knowledge, then if let's say your strategy is to implement AI, then you are going to listen to an AI expert and you're going to get the ideas of how to write your AI strategy. If it's marketing, you're going to hear about that. Bob is amazing. He was a guest on my podcast. I was a guest on his, and he is going to talk about financial wealth, right? Wealth management. So if this is part of your strategy, then you gain. And the fact that you're going to have access to each and every one of us, it's going to we can help you with this strategy. And, and of course, Carl is the master of writing strategies. So this is a great opportunity, but it's also the opportunity of being together as entrepreneurs, listen to each other, networking in beautiful Phoenix. I mean, what else? What can be better than that?
Oh, in November. Yeah, it's exactly. We're going to the time of year when it's getting colder in the northern latitudes, right? And but yeah, this is not a fluff conference. It's a real value, and it's limited to 40, which I love that. Once again, I keep on going, but why is that important? Because I want the owners to meet actual experts and get to talk with them one-on-one. And we want each one of the people, if you don't get your value, you're going to get your money back. But the other part behind this is we're not accepting anyone. So people have to actually go through an approval process. This is, I hate to use the term exclusive, but it's a little bit exclusive. To be a part of this group, we're not looking for people who have great ideas. We're looking for people who want to take their company to the next level. And that's who are going to be the right people, because we're going to come away with a plan, and you're going to be fired up to head into 2026, heading into the holidays, right? You're going to be like, hey, I am now ready to go and crush the year 2026 and stop waiting, right? There's been so much uncertainty in 2025. It's time to stop being uncertain and derive this certainty so you could survive and thrive. Day one is about creating value, and day two is about extracting value out of your company. And so understanding both things, because it's amazing how many people created value. 90% of business owners' wealth is tied up in their business.
That's right.
And so trying to not only just grow the value, but extract the value is so valuable. And so we're going to, if you aren't already aware, we're going to be teaching a ton of strategies around that from a tax perspective and wealth basis also. So once again, there's going to be specific, as you can tell, I'm excited about this, and I'm excited to really help, because it's part of our mission to start with was to positively impact 10,000 business owners and 1,000 directly. And so we're going to be doing that through these conferences. And actually, we're going to go way beyond that number. We're ultimately get to a point where to get to like 400 people a year, business owners a year that we're working with.
You like the 40 number. So, Carl, why yes. 40? We have to tell the listeners why 40.
Oh, yeah. So 40, 40 came from the concept. The worldly statement behind it is most organizations only have about 2% of their time they spend in their business, which is equivalent to 40 hours per year. And so on the strategy side, what we found is we can work with a client for just 40 hours per year. We can grow your company. And so that's it in a nutshell.
We have 40, 400. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, you got to stick with your brand, but it's real, it's relevant, and it's also, though, I'm going to say this for just a moment, because anybody who's been a part of Strategic Retreat, they're fun, right? For most people, they're fun. But what's frustrating is when nothing happens afterwards. Mm-hmm. How many conferences have you been to and you get all excited and then you go back into your job and you don't do anything?
Right.
And so why we're different, Adi and I, we're both action-oriented people. And so we work with people specifically to get the job done. And so that's what's our differentiator. It's not just great ideas, but it's a plan and an action strategy to get through it. So as I talked about, we literally create a 10-week sprint of what you're going to work on starting in January to get working on your business. And then you repeat that every quarter, a 10-week sprint every quarter. And it creates momentum, it creates excitement, and then you start seeing the results, which is really fun.
That's amazing. Amazing. Carl, if people want to get a hold of you, where should they go?
There's several places, but we'll keep it simple. We'll encourage you to go to 40strategy.com. You'll see all the information there, from our podcast to our book, and of course the 40 Strategy Growth Workshop. You'll see that information on there. And so yeah, I encourage you to go there. You could also find us on LinkedIn under Carl J. Cox. You'll see a lot of information there as well.
Absolutely. And one thing that I really recommend is that you sign up for Carl's newsletter. You're going to get it every Saturday morning. And I read it because, Carl, really, you write it. I mean, that's not AI. I mean, that is really from your heart, stories about your family, stories about your experience, about people that you care about. And it's always, I find something that resonates with me, and it's a great Saturday read. So absolutely, I recommend get on the mailing list. Sign up for the workshop. We would love to see you there. And Carl, thank you so much for you're going to be here on this podcast, of course, again, but thank you for being a guest again on this podcast and sharing your insights and, giving your optimistic view, which is very important for success and continuation. So thank you.
Absolutely. Once again, it's an honor to be on your podcast, and just so excited about where we're both heading in the future, and excited about everyone who's listening. I hope this has encouraged your listeners, right, to take some action and move forward in the right direction.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.